I'm Maria, and I've always been the odd one out in my family. From the moment I was born, I felt like a disappointment to my dad. He really wanted a boy, and when the doctor said, "It's a girl," I saw the disappointment on his face. That moment set the tone for our relationship. My older sister Olivia was the star of the family, smart, talented, and perfect in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was just there. Our home was always filled with praise for Olivia's latest success. "Did you hear Olivia got another A on her math test?" Or, "Look at the beautiful painting Olivia made." My report cards barely got a reaction, and my crayon drawings often ended up in the trash. As I grew older, I learned to take care of myself. I made my own lunches, did my laundry, and figured out my homework alone. It wasn't great, but it made me independent and strong. One day when I was about 14, something happened that changed my life. I was hungry after school, and since no one was around to make me a snack, I decided to try baking cookies. I followed a recipe from one of Mom's old cookbooks, and to my surprise, they turned out really good. The next day, I took some to school, and my classmate Deborah tried one. Her eyes widened and she said, "Maria, these are amazing. Did your mom make them?" I smiled and said, "No, I did." Word spread quickly, and soon kids were asking me to bring more. For the first time in my life, I felt special. I had found something I was good at, something that made people notice me. When I got home that day, I was so excited. "Mom, Dad, guess what? I made cookies and everyone at school loved them." Mom barely looked up from her magazine and said, "That's nice, dear. Just make sure you clean up the kitchen." Dad frowned and said, "Cookies, Maria? You should focus on your studies, not waste time in the kitchen." My heart sank, but I didn't let their reaction take away my joy. I had found my passion, and I wasn't going to let anyone stop me. As time went on, the gap between Olivia and me grew even bigger. Olivia graduated high school with top grades and got accepted into a famous college. You'd think our parents had won the lottery with how they celebrated. Meanwhile, I was still in high school with decent but not great grades. But I had found my thing: baking. Every weekend, I baked cakes, pies, and cookies. Soon even the neighbors started ordering from me, and I had a small business going. One day, Mrs. Frank from next door took a bite of my chocolate cake and said, "Maria, honey, this is amazing. You have a real talent." I smiled proudly and said, "Thanks. I'm thinking about going to culinary school after I graduate." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, that's wonderful. You'd do great." But when I told my parents, their reactions were completely different. Mom's face fell. "Culinary school? But that's just cooking." Dad slammed his fist on the table. "Absolutely not. No daughter of mine will waste her life in a kitchen." "But Dad," I argued, "I'm good at it. People love my baking." He scoffed. "Good? So what? You think you can make a living flipping burgers or decorating cakes? Wake up, Maria. The real world doesn't work like that." Mom added softly but just as coldly, "Honey, think about your future. Look at Olivia. She's studying finance. She'll have a real career." Their words hurt deeply, but I wasn't ready to give up. I started selling my baked goods at school events and to classmates. The response was amazing. "Maria, these cookies are incredible," my friend Larry said, his mouth full of chocolate chip cookie. "You should open a bakery or something." I smiled, imagining it. My own little shop filled with the smell of fresh bread and pastries. It felt like a dream. But at home, that dream soon turned into a nightmare. One day, Dad found a flyer for my bake sale. "What's this?" he demanded. I swallowed nervously. "It's for school. We're raising money for new computers." He glared. "Don't lie to me, Maria. I know you've been selling your treats. This stops now. You need to focus on real studies, not this hobby." But Dad, I'm making good money, I said. Money? He snapped. You call a few dollars for cookies money? Do you know how much your sister makes at her internship? That's real money. That's a real future. I bit my lip, trying not to cry. I just thought. He cut me off. No, you didn't think. Listen carefully. This baking nonsense ends now. You'll get your grades up and apply to real colleges. If I hear about one more cake or cookie, we'll cut you off. No more college fund, no more support. Got it. That night, I cried myself to sleep. My dream of culinary school crumbled like an overbaked cookie. The next day, I started researching business colleges, my heart heavy but determined. Somehow, someday, I'd find a way to follow my passion. But for now, I had to play by their rules. College passed by in a blur of numbers, spreadsheets, and financial reports. I focused hard on my accounting studies, trying to convince myself it was the right choice. But every time I passed a bakery or smelled fresh bread, my heart ached for the dream I had left behind. After I got my degree, I found a job at a big company, and my parents were thrilled. I rented a small apartment, determined to live on my own. But as I sat at my desk every day doing numbers and reports, I felt myself slowly fading inside. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I took out my old recipe book, its pages worn and stained from happier times, and decided to bake a batch of cupcakes. I lost myself in the process of mixing and baking. The next day, I brought them to work, and the response was instant. "Oh my God, Maria, these are amazing," my coworker Brenda said. "Where did you buy them?" I hesitated and then said, "Actually, I made them." Word spread fast, and soon people were asking if I could bake cakes for birthdays, kids' parties, and even weddings. I started small, just doing a few orders on weekends, but soon I was spending all my free time in the kitchen. My little apartment was always filled with the smell of vanilla and chocolate. The big moment came when my company's anniversary was coming up. The director came to me and said, "Maria, I hear you're quite the baker. How would you feel about making the cake for our anniversary party?" My heart raced. It was a huge chance and a big risk, but I couldn't say no. On the day of the party, I brought in a huge cake decorated with the company's logo and detailed sugar flowers. When I revealed it, the room went silent. Then the director smiled and said, "This is incredible. Everyone give it up for Maria, our accounting wizard and, apparently, master pastry chef." The room filled with applause. The director even hugged me and whispered, "You're wasted in accounting, Maria. This is your true calling." His words stayed with me. As more cake orders came in, I realized I had a choice to make. I was working 2 full-time jobs, accountant by day, baker by night. Something had to give. One sleepless night, covered in flour and surrounded by cake orders, I made my decision. The next day, I handed in my resignation. My supervisor was shocked. "But why? You're one of our best," she said. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I found my true passion," I replied simply. I rented a small commercial kitchen and threw myself into my new business. It was both scary and exciting at the same time. There were nights I stayed up all night filling orders and days when I wondered if I had made a big mistake. But little by little, my bakery began to grow. I hired my first employee, then my second. We moved into a bigger space, and soon my cakes and pastries became well known across the city. Through it all, I kept it a secret from my parents. As far as they knew, I was still a successful accountant moving up in my company. I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right time to tell them the truth, but deep down, I was scared. Scared of their disappointment, anger, and rejection. As my bakery business grew, I realized I needed to step up. I jumped into modern marketing, determined to make my shop stand out. I created social media pages for the bakery and posted photos of my creations every day. But I was careful not to show myself. No selfies, no pictures of me as the baker, just the cakes, cookies, and pastries. Despite my fears, the business took off. I partnered with a local delivery service to reach more customers around the city. I started a loyalty program offering discounts to returning customers. Then came my big idea: Sweet Tooth Saturdays. Once a month, we opened our doors and offered free samples to anyone who stopped by. The first time, I was so nervous. What if no one comes? I worried to my employee, Emma. She rolled her eyes and said, "Boss, have you tasted your own stuff? People will be lining up around the block." She was right. By noon, there was a long line down the street. Seeing people's faces light up after tasting my treats filled me with a joy that had nothing to do with the ovens. Our popularity exploded. Soon we were catering for big events, supplying desserts to fancy restaurants, and even shipping our signature cookies across the country. With success came money, more money than I ever thought I'd earn, especially just from baking cookies, as my dad once said. Before I knew it, I was earning more than my sister's bank salary. I started helping my parents financially, still pretending it was all from my accounting job. When their roof needed fixing, I paid for it. When they talked about wanting to visit Europe, I surprised them with tickets. "Oh, Maria, you shouldn't have," Mom said, though her eyes sparkled with excitement. While I was building my business and helping my parents, Olivia was living her best life. She still lived at home and spent her whole paycheck on designer clothes, fancy gadgets, and her obsession with self-care. But none of that mattered to my parents. To them, Olivia was still the star. "Did you hear about Olivia's promotion?" Mom would say proudly. "Vice president of her department." At only 30, I would force a smile and say, "That's great, Olivia, congrats." Meanwhile, I was running a successful bakery, employing a dozen people and making hundreds of customers happy every day. But in our house, that didn't seem to matter at all. One day at Sweet Dreams Bakery, things started like any other day. I was in the kitchen putting the final touches on a wedding cake when Emma rushed in, waving an order form. "Boss, you're not going to believe this," she said, her eyes wide. I wiped my hands on my apron and asked, "What's up?" She said, "We just got an order for a birthday cake, and the delivery address is," she paused dramatically, "your parents' house." It felt like I had been splashed with cold water. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded and handed me the form. There it was in black and white, my childhood address, my mom's name, and a note saying it was for her birthday. I couldn't breathe for a moment, but then a plan formed in my mind. "Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though my heart was racing, "clear my schedule. This cake is going to be my masterpiece." For the next week, I put everything I had into that cake. 3 tiers of Mom's favorite flavors, decorated with hand-piped flowers and delicate sugar figures. It was the best cake I had ever made. As I worked, I imagined the moment. My parents' amazement when they saw it, their pride when I told them I had made it, and the joy of finally showing them who I truly was. The day of the party came. I arrived early with a small gift, keeping up my act. The house was full of relatives I hadn't seen in years. "Maria," Aunt Anna said, hugging me, "look at you, all grown up. Still crunching numbers." I nodded, the usual lie catching in my throat. "Yep, still at it." I couldn't wait for my cake to arrive from the bakery. Then the doorbell rang. Mom answered, and there was our delivery guy holding a familiar Sweet Dreams bakery box. "Special delivery for the birthday girl," he said cheerfully. The room went silent as Mom carried the box to the dining table. She lifted the lid, and everyone gasped. There were murmurs of awe as they admired the cake in all its glory. I stood there, my heart pounding, waiting for the right moment to speak. But before I could say anything, Dad cleared his throat. "Before we celebrate," he said in a serious tone, "there's something we need to talk about." The room fell silent. Everyone turned toward my parents, whose faces were filled with anger and disgust. "We recently discovered something," Mom said coldly. A secret that's been kept from us. The tension in the room was unbearable. I felt frozen as Dad spoke again, his voice shaking with anger. "Can you believe it?" he said, looking around at everyone and pointing at me. "Our Maria has been lying to us this whole time. She's not an accountant, she's a pastry chef." He said it like it was the worst thing in the world. I tried to speak, to explain myself, but no words came out. This couldn't be happening. Dad's face was red with rage. "We always dreamed our daughters would find real success, become respected members of society," he said, pointing at Olivia. "Like your sister, vice president at her age. That's something to be proud of." Olivia looked uncomfortable and avoided my eyes. "But you," Mom said, staring right at me, "we gave you everything, every chance, and this is how you repay us? By becoming an ordinary cook." The word ordinary hurt more than I could ever imagine. Didn't they see what I had built? Didn't they understand? Suddenly, Dad walked over to the table where my cake sat. In one quick move, he flipped the box over. I watched in shock as my beautiful cake, the masterpiece I had worked so hard on, crashed to the floor, a broken mess of icing and sponge. The guests gasped. "We're not eating this," Dad said with a sneer. "It's beneath us." Mom nodded in agreement. "Maria, you've shown us you don't belong with respectable people. You've disobeyed us for the last time." Dad's next words hit me like a punch. "We disown you. You're no longer our daughter." I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. I looked around the room, hoping someone would defend me, but everyone avoided my gaze. Even Aunt Anna, who had hugged me earlier, now whispered to Uncle Adam, "I always knew she was trouble." Others nodded in agreement. The room, which had been full of celebration just moments ago, now felt cold and hateful. "Leave," Mom said, her voice like ice. "Leave now and don't ever contact us again." I stood there frozen, tears streaming down my face. How could they do this? How could they throw away everything I had achieved and everything I was? It felt so cruel. "Didn't you hear your mother?" Dad barked. "Get out." Somehow, I found the strength to move. I turned and walked toward the door, my vision blurred by tears. As I reached for the handle, I heard Olivia's voice, soft and unsure. "Mom, Dad, maybe we should," but her words were cut off as the door closed behind me. I stumbled down the front steps, the same steps I had climbed so many times as a kid, but now they felt strange and unwelcoming. I reached my car, and that's when I started crying hard. Sitting there, surrounded by the broken pieces of the family I had just lost, something inside me broke too. The dream I had held onto for so long, that my parents would finally accept and understand me, was gone, just like my cake that shattered on their dining room floor. I don't know how long I sat there crying, but when the sun began to set and long shadows covered the neighborhood I grew up in, I knew one thing for sure: I could never come back here again. The days after that birthday party passed in a blur. I moved like a ghost, barely eating, hardly sleeping. The bakery stayed open because of my amazing staff, but I was only going through the motions. Slowly, as the shock faded, I threw myself into my work with new energy. If my family couldn't appreciate my passion, I would show the world how great an ordinary cook could be. The bakery flourished. We opened a second location, then a third. Magazines featured my story, I appeared on TV shows, and I even got a cookbook deal. Success came in waves, and I rode each one with determination. I bought a beautiful apartment, my own peaceful place in the city. 3 years after the fallout with my family, I met Tyler. He was kind, supportive, and thought my cakes were the best thing ever. When he proposed a year later, I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small but perfect. As I looked around at the smiling faces of my friends and the family I had chosen, I realized I didn't miss my blood relatives at all. My employees, friends, and husband were my real family now. Life settled into a happy routine. The bakery thrived, and Tyler and I built a wonderful life together. I had everything I wanted, except closure. That changed one Friday afternoon, years after that painful birthday. I was in my office, reviewing plans for our new bakery location, when my phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but something made me answer.
"Hello,"
I said.
Maria, came my mother's unsure but clear voice.
"Please don't hang up. We need to talk." Then she started explaining. The bank where Olivia worked had lost its license, there were big layoffs, and Olivia had been out of work for months. They needed help. Before I could fully take it in, I heard my father's voice cut in. "You need to give Olivia a job at your bakery, as the director. She has real business experience. You can just be one of the bakers."
The absurdity of it all hit me.
After 4 years of silence, this was why they called? A cold laugh escaped me. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You disowned me, threw me out, and now you want me to give my business to Olivia?" My dad shouted. "We gave you life. We raised you.
You owe us."
Something inside me snapped. All the pain and anger I had carried for years rushed out. "I owe you nothing," I said calmly but firmly. "You made your choice 4 years ago. I'm not your daughter, remember? I'm just an ordinary cook beneath you. I won't be helping you or Olivia. Goodbye." I hung up, my hand trembling slightly. For a moment, I sat there letting it sink in. Then, slowly, a smile spread across my face. I felt lighter, like a weight I didn't know I carried was finally gone. I owed them nothing. I was free. Just when I thought my family story was over, life surprised me again. One quiet Monday afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I hadn't seen in years, Olivia's. Feeling both nervous and curious, I answered.
"Hello,"
I said. "Maria." Olivia's voice was soft and shaky. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling." I took a deep breath. "It's okay, Olivia."
"What's going on?"
What followed changed everything. Olivia apologized again and again for how our parents had treated me, both years ago and recently. "I had no idea they called you asking for a job," she said, emotional. "I would never have asked for that."
"I'm so sorry, Maria."
I felt a knot in my chest start to loosen. "Thank you, Olivia," I said. "That means a lot." She went on to explain how losing her job had opened her eyes. "I realized I've been living someone else's dream," she said. "Banking was never what I wanted. It was Mom and Dad's plan for me." I listened quietly as my sister poured her heart out. "Seeing you follow your passion and build this amazing business inspired me," she said. "I've decided to change my life. I've enrolled in interior design courses. I want to create beautiful spaces and be true to myself, like you did." Tears filled my eyes. All these years, I had thought Olivia had the perfect life. I never knew she was struggling too. "That's wonderful, Olivia," I said. "I'm so happy for you." There was a pause, then her voice came again, full of emotion. "I'm proud of you, Maria. You stood up for yourself, followed your dreams, and now you're living the life you wanted."
"That's amazing."
I couldn't hold back my tears. Years of pain, anger, and longing for my sister came pouring out. We talked for hours, catching up, sharing our hopes and fears. As the conversation wound down, Olivia softly suggested, maybe we could meet up sometime, just to talk, support each other." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'd like that, Olivia," I said. "I'd like that a lot." Over the next few months, Olivia and I met regularly. We shared coffee and pastries from my bakery, laughed about old memories, and supported each other through our career ups and downs. Her interior design business was growing fast, and I couldn't have been prouder. As for our parents, we heard through others that they had disowned Olivia too after she left banking. They told people their daughters had disappointed them, one a simple cook, the other a silly decorator. But Olivia and I knew the truth. We were living our dreams, building our own success, and doing what we loved. One day, during one of our weekly meetups at my bakery, Olivia looked around the busy shop and smiled. "You know," she said, "I think we turned out pretty great, all things considered." I laughed, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the ovens. "Yeah," I said, smiling, "I think we did." As I watched my sister sketch design ideas on a napkin, surrounded by the sweet smell of pastries and the sound of happy customers, I felt a deep sense of peace. This was my life. Messy, challenging, but sweet. I had fought for my dreams, lost some battles, but in the end, I had truly won.